Well, good morning, everybody. I see we've got some people going here, and that's great. Um, I want to talk about three things today, and of course, I want to take questions and all of that. But um, probably the first thing I wanted to see, and I noticed that BB Lee asked about it up here about the Casotus guilty verdict. You know, I guess I guess the ideal juror for Nick Casotus would have been someone who believes in the Easter Bunny, because there is absolutely no way you could believe his testimony. And I don't think he intended to make it look like he was lying by answering the prosecution's questions when he knew they had the goods on him. He just said, "Yes, you're an attorney, you knew all this stuff, and then you still didn't ask to see the guy's credentials." You don't have to ask to see an FBI agent's credentials. They are more than happy to provide that to you, let me assure you. And as a result of that, there's just no way you could believe him. And he's the classic narcissist because he decided to testify because he didn't think, I guess, that Doug Weinstein had done as good enough of a job of selling his alternate theory about Jim McIntyre. And I love the fact that at the end of that, the judge basically told him, "Look, we all know Jim McIntyre doesn't exist, but you do, and you're going to the pokey for the rest of your life." And I also thought it was great that he gave him 25 years that ran consecutive to the life sentence. So he would have to die and be brought back to life and still have to serve 25 years. Not that that would really happen. But at any rate, I thought that was the right answer. I thought it was the right verdict. I actually, when I started that trial, I didn't think the prosecutor was doing a great job. I felt like there was something missing in her delivery or whatever, but I think she is like a lot of prosecutors that don't have a lot of big cases. That's probably the first case of hers that's ever been streamed. So she's on camera, she knows she's on camera, she's got a big audience, and I think she was just a little nervous, but I thought her cross-examination, and I recorded her cross-examination, but I didn't get a chance to do a video on it because events sort of overtook me. I had to drive down to Florida. The air conditioner in our Florida house went out, and I had to go get that fixed, because we have people coming for the period of time that we're gonna be off on vacation. And so I felt kind of duty bound to do that for people that I love very much because they're going to be down there and I didn't want them sweating to death. It was 84 degrees in the house when I went in there. 84 degrees, not a good day. And while I was down there, I mowed the lawn, developed a little heat stroke, but life goes on. Because I didn't have any way to cure that other than to take a shower. And when you take a shower after you've been hot like that and you get out, you're still sweating. I'm not sure what a shower does for you. So, in addition to talking about Nick, I wanted to talk about my plans for the cruise. As you all know, I told you I was going to get some videos together. Well, they are all uploaded and they're ready to go. I took a lot of your suggestions, I made them into videos, and I hope you'll enjoy them while I'm gone. Um, but let me tell you how much I love you guys. Let me show you what this is. This is a iPad Air Pro, I'm sorry, iPad Pro 11-inch M4, most the most current version of the iPad you can get with 512 gig of memory. In addition to that, I have the keyboard, the Magic Keyboard, and the pencil and all that other hoopla. But I got it because my wife said, "Okay, you can stream while we're on the cruise." She bought us the premium Wi-Fi package. It's like $800 for the period of time that we're going to be gone. But I thought it might be worth it because the Adelson trial is starting, and I definitely want to be able to comment on that. Now, I'm going to stream from the boat, and my research indicates that the streaming upload speeds are between 2 and 5 kilobits per second, which means that the quality of the video is going to probably be a little less. It'll probably be 720 instead of 1080, which is what I usually do. I have really great internet here in both in Florida and in um, Alabama, and as a result, I never have to worry about my streaming speeds. But on the boat, I'm going to have to worry about that. So I hope you'll bear with me. My wife is a lovely person. Thank you for noticing that. Um, she is a great person. So, like I said, I've got pretty good speeds here, but I don't know what it's going to be like on the boat. I'm going to do my very best to get the best speeds that I can. And in fact, I went on Chat GPT and had them give me all kinds of information about how to optimize the setting for all of that. So, it's really odd. I use OBS, the Open Broadcast System, to do my streams and to do my videos. And it works really, really well. It's a great setup, but they don't have a version that works on the iPad. So there's about 4 different ways you can stream on an iPad, and I guess 5 if you include YouTube. But of course, if you do YouTube, you don't get any of the other stuff that, you would ordinarily get. So, I'm looking at a couple of different options in terms of software to do it, and, it it's pretty interesting. I'll just say this, $1,800 for an iPad, $800 for a streaming package. The ability to stream while I'm gone, priceless. So the Adelson trial, like I said, is coming up. Jury selection starts on the 19th. I really think that the lawyers were hoping for another continuance, possibly out as about as far as 2035, because I'm pretty sure that death is the only thing that's going to get her a good result in this trial. So I thought about this today. What does the best juror look like for her? And there are a couple of different people I think that would probably make good jurors for her that might be likely to hang up a trial, although I haven't seen the evidence, but if the evidence is as suggested by the state, I don't think there's going to be any contest. But first of all, you need somebody young who's gullible, who distrusts authority, has a grandmother who would never hurt a flea, and he is inclined to believe Donna Adelson. That that's like a unicorn. I don't think there is such a creature. You also, if you're Donna Adelson, you want older women, people who might have been pushed around a little bit in life, um, used as babysitters without pay or thanks. One of the things that she's said repeatedly in some of these phone calls to Charlie Adelson is, how she felt used because Wendy would dump her children with with her, and then she'd get to babysit them, and she didn't really get the benefit of, playing with her grandchildren the way she wanted to. I don't know how you can have it both ways, but then again, I'm not Donna Adelson. And you're also looking for that one juror who just wants to stick it to the man. Because again, I think that's the only way that she gets any kind of a hung jury or acquittal. I don't think there's going to be an acquittal, but I think there might be a hung jury if they get the right jury. And so, in order to get a hung jury or an acquittal, here's just a short summary of what they're going to have to ignore. First, they're going to have to ignore her interaction with the undercover that happened in Charlie's trial. You may have seen it if you watched Charlie's trial, where this big kind of hulking guy came up and said, "Hey, you didn't help with our fellow who got pinched for this, the deal that you set up for him to whack your son-in-law, and we feel like you need to give us some money so that we can take care of his family while he's in prison." And being clueless, Donna didn't say anything really, but she wasn't surprised either. And I think that's probably a clear sign there. If she had had her wits about her, she would have said, "You're trying to shake me down. You're basically just trying to make this into something that it shouldn't be. And I'm going to go to the cops. I'm going to report you for trying to shake me down for money for this guy in prison. And you're both going to go to prison." And of course, he's not going to go to prison because he's an undercover officer and he gets to do this kind of stuff. But again, you have to ignore that whole interaction and the fact that after that, she called Charlie, and Charlie's like, "Get off the phone." Charlie had a little bit of sense at the end of this, not so much in the beginning. And then, according to the prosecution, she made an attempt to pay for false testimony from a witness. That came to the prosecution through a snitch in the jail. And the allegations, provable or not, that she tried to harm her estranged son, one of the few sane Adelsons, and Katie Magbonua. I always manage to screw up that name. Katie. I'm going to just call her Katie. The mom of the and she also supposedly wanted to harm the mom of the jailhouse informant. And the defense says that that's lies, all lies, but I have my doubts. And then she's going to have to overcome the wiretaps and the fact that she tried to flee to Vietnam, which doesn't have an extradition treaty with the United States. So all of those things I think, are pretty bad for Donna, but we'll just kind of have to see how that works out. Then there is this. She's going to try to repeat the Nick Casotus trick of testifying. And she's going to get out there and try to spin a tale and make it believable. And if I were the prosecutor, I would just be hoping to heaven that she did testify. Now, maybe she will, maybe she won't. It could be that common sense will take over and she won't testify. But if she testifies, that's that's probably going to work out the way it worked for the guy in South Carolina. You know, uh, it's just amazing to me that people even think that they can sell the kind of stuff that Nick sold, and that Donna is going to have to come up with to sell what happened in her case. Now, keep in mind, lots of stuff that's coming from the snitches inside the jail. If the prosecution relies on them, there's a good chance that that will harm their case more than it will help it, because nobody likes a tattletale or a snitch. And everybody knows that those people who come in and say those things are getting something for it. They may not be getting something for it right away, but after the conviction comes, people are much more likely to look with favor on plea deals for those people who have helped them. Pardon me. And then I guess the last question, maybe not the last question, but the thing that I think is interesting is whether or not Wendy will testify. Now, she held her own against the state each time she's testified, at least it seemed to me she did. She doesn't rattle easily. She's very careful not to testify falsely because she has use immunity. Now, I've talked about that before, but use immunity keeps the government from using the testimony against her in a murder case. Lots of speculation out there that she was involved, but to date, no hard evidence. The one bad thing is that she turned down the street where she used to live, where Dan had just been shot, on the day that he was shot. But I suspect if she had really known that he had been shot, she would have stayed a country mile away from there, because she would have known as a lawyer that that would have looked really bad. So, in many respects, that tends to suggest that she wasn't involved in planning this and getting it done. There are a lot of people who think I'm absolutely nuts for saying that, and it's okay to disagree with me if you think I'm wrong. But the other thing that would be there is there would be phone calls. There'd be records of phone calls or messages or something that would have alerted her to the fact that the job had been done. And at least in the earlier trials, nobody came up with any of that and put it forward. Plus, I just don't think Wendy could get a fair trial in Leon County. I think there are so many people that just hate her. Dan Markel was a very good guy, and everybody that has talked about him in very, very favorable ways. So, again, I don't know how that's going to come out, but I'm going to be looking forward to go in there and do some streaming while I'm off on the ship to talk about what's going on in the trial. And of course, as always, if you guys have comments or questions, send them to me by email. And so now I'm going to go back and take a look at some of these comments and see if I can answer some questions. Um, B. Michigan says Casotus was brazen to try to claim it wasn't me. Yes, he was not only brazen, he was just kind of stupid, if you ask me. Um, Somebody is, you must be watching must be watching in Europe somewhere, 6 p.m. Tell your wife thank you. I will definitely tell her thank you. And she is a great person. Um, is Donna being charged with murder one, solicitation of murder, or something else? I believe there are three charges. One of them is solicitation for murder. The other is murder one. And then there's a third one. And I'm not sure. I don't remember what that was. I knew at one time. I knew at one time what she was charged with. But my understanding was there were three counts in the indictment. This is something you may know or may not know. But if you go to the Leon County Court website, they have a separate listing of the dockets for what I guess they would call their big cases, their streaming cases. And Donna Adelson's case is featured prominently there. And you could go there very easily and um, look at the actual indictment. And I've done that previously. I just didn't think to do it before I came to the stream this morning, even though I knew I was going to talk about Donna Adelson. Sorry about that, guys. Don't mean to let anybody down. Unicorn juror can sit next to the leprechaun juror. Yes, exactly. Uh, can't wait to see the prosecutor in action. She's not shy, that's for sure. Well, neither one of them are shy. I mean, how, I guess that'd be the wrong way to put it. How much chutzpah do you have to try to get somebody in jail, to try to get their mom hurt because they're going to testify against you? I mean, she apparently used her, at least they think she used her lawyer's cell phone to do that. And if that's the case, that's a per that the Donna has a lot of chutzpah, but I think her name is Georgia Applebaum or Applemom, something like that. Georgia is a very good prosecutor, and um, she doesn't cross-examine the way I think I would cross-examine, but again, most of these folks on here don't. I guess they must do it differently in the criminal law than they do in civil law, but I think, in many respects, she won't have any trouble cross-examining, Donna. Let's see. May have already mentioned this, but what do you think about Casotus' blink rate during the sentencing? Insane, in my opinion. That twitch. That twitch is a nervous tick. Kept doing this when he was talking to when he was waiting for the judge to drop the hammer on him. And he could not possibly have sat there and listened to the evidence that came in at trial and thought that there was any hope in the world that he was going to be acquitted. And by the way, I really loved the way the clerk read the verdict. So many times you get in the case of so and so versus the state of Florida or versus the state of Alabama, whatever, in the cause number such and such, we, the jury, find, no, not in this case, guilty, count two, guilty, count three, guilty. It was just kind of fun to listen to that, and I think the the really painful part of that was listening to some of the impact statements, the victim impact statements. And Weinstein did have a good objection to what was her name, Kolesnik, because she wasn't really a victim in the case. But I thought that the prosecutor again did a pretty good job of saying, well, it goes to mitigation and that sort of thing. And I mean, the guy was just kind of an evil guy. And it was really hard to explain, in my opinion, how you can claim that you're romancing somebody uh, that is, when your wife is dead when she's very clearly alive. Georgia Kappelman, that's right. I'm sorry. I got the apple part wrong, but not the C part. Uh, Darlene Wesley says, I can't find the channel. Which channel would that be, I wonder? Because if you're on the chat, you've clearly got the channel here. Um, Gosh, I guess I should have changed that thing up at the top that says Saturday live stream. Somebody probably thinks we're not live, but we really are. I sorry about that. Ah, it's been an interesting week. It's going to be an even more interesting weekend. I've had a dog, a Schnorky, for 13 years, and about 9 months ago, she jumped off of the couch and hurt her back, and her back has continued to get worse and worse and worse. And now, basically, she's just dragging herself around by her front paws. And I just can't stand to watch that any longer. And if we go away for 18 days, uh, which is what we're planning, that alone would kill her. So I think over the weekend, we're going to go visit the veterinarian and have to put down Miss Ellie. And that breaks my heart. It breaks my wife's heart. It's an awful thing that we have to do. But I refuse to let her continue to suffer. And as I told my wife the other day, she's hanging on just for us. She wants to be there to protect us, even though she can barely make it out the door just to go to the bathroom. So that's um that's one of the things that's really got a it's kind of taken up some bandwidth in me, I have to say. Casotus's family is sure deluded on his true nature. I heard someone who was in the gallery say that his parents were saying horrible things about defense witnesses. Well, you know, blood is always thicker than water, and family members are usually the easiest to convince that you're being railroaded. Um, yeah, it's never easy. Um, I can't I can't think that they could have watched that and not understood what was going on, what he was doing. This is a classic case of a guy who had a great education, had fairly stellar service in the Navy as a prosecutor and as a defense counsel, so he knows all of this stuff. He just thought he was untouchable, and he thought if he convinced her parents that she died in the hospital, and he buried parts of her all around the state of Georgia, that they would never be found, and as a result, he would never be brought to justice. And he just he mentioned that he's not a hunter. And if you're not a hunter, it's not a good idea to go into a hunting preserve, for one thing, because if you're not wearing bright orange clothing, somebody might mistake you for Bambi. But the other thing is, you don't realize that people walk through that area all the time. And there was actually a much better chance of him being discovered or her remains being discovered there than they would have been out in pretty much any other field anywhere in that county. So again, it is usually a lack of knowledge about how these cases are put together that winds up getting these people caught. And thank heaven that it does get them caught. And if you're Ms. Kolesnik, I mean, you are thanking your lucky stars. You're saying a prayer every night of thanks because she could have been the next one to end up in a tub. Because he seems to have this throwaway passion for getting rid of people that he's no longer enamored with. Um, we pet parents have to make those hard choices. Yes, we do. Probably, but and somebody says tough, but probably the right one. Absolutely the right one. Uh, just look at the O'Keefe family. The mother never once questioned the state's theory on what happened. Well, no. Um, and that's because I think they didn't like her. And, I guess I can understand that. I can see where she might be kind of hard to like and maybe difficult to warm up to. But that's exactly, they wanted to believe the state's theory, and that's why they believed it. Um, the countdown thing shouldn't be anywhere on there. maybe you're back a little ways in the chat. Just pull the red dot forward all the way down. That's probably what you need to do. How old is she? She's 13 years old. Lost my dog in May. It's heartbreaking. Yes, it is. Um, Hope you're having a wonderful day. Doing my best, meeting with my friends, speaking with my friends. Uh, it's always something that's uplifting. Uh, it's funny to have 42,000 of your closest friends spread out all over the world, but I'm glad I do. You know, it's been humbling actually to be invited into all those homes and onto all those computer screens and have an opportunity to talk and explain things and offer opinions and from time to time, like in the Ali case and in the Colin Griffith case, be wrong about how things were going to end. Still don't understand the Ali case. That just blows me away. Um, let's see. Does anybody have any questions about Casotus or any of the cases that have been going on? Um, I did that kind of that one-off case a few days ago. That was kind of an interesting case too. The ability to get that lady tried inside of 2 days and sent to prison for the rest of her life. That was pretty speedy justice. Has a pro se defendant ever had a murder conviction overturned in an appellate court? Just wondering, unrelated. If it has happened, I don't know about it. And the reason is because the system is so complex. You know, one of the reasons that the founders put in the due process clause and the right to counsel clause in the Bill of Rights is because even then the process wasn't necessarily um, intuitive. I'll put it that way. But now you have to know the rules of evidence, you have to know the rules of procedure, and all of that to try a case. And then while you're trying the case, you also have to know the rules of appellate procedure to know how to preserve what you think is error for appellate review. Then, assuming you get it, preserved in a timely manner at the trial court, then you've got to get the record, you've got to go through the record, you've got to create a compelling brief, and it has to be written according to the rules. Um, like on civil cases in Colorado, for example, to the Supreme Court of Colorado, you're limited to 25 pages, which is just, I mean, it's just crazy. Most lawyers can't get a paragraph in under 25 pages. And so it's a difficult situation. So can you imagine somebody who is obviously not got legal training trying to go through that process and do a good job of it? It's one of the reasons why, frankly, I enjoyed working for the Samaritan Center in Jefferson City, handling some of these pieces that would otherwise be pro se, because people need an advocate to get them through the system. It's sad, but it's true. And again, it's a very complex system, complex rules, more gotchas buried in the system than you could even imagine. And unfortunately, that's just the way it is. Um, Casotus was quick. It was quick. Does Casotus have any grounds for appeal? Well, yes, he has grounds for appeal, but are they winnable grounds? There were things that were admitted that I thought he had a legitimate argument to keep out, but you have to remember the way appellate courts look at evidentiary issues is that the evidence, the judge has a great deal of discretion in whether or not to admit evidence. And basically, to get an abuse of discretion, it has to be just unbelievably bad. It has to be barred by something like clearly by the hearsay rule, not subject to any exception, and no legitimate reason for admitting the evidence other than to make the other guy look bad. That's the kind of thing that gets an evidentiary case, turned over. And it has to be issue dispositive. It has to be dispositive of a key issue inside the case in order to merit reversing the verdict. And that that is not something that you're going to find in the Casotus case, I don't think. Um, I fear for Fatima's future. I do too. Uh, do you know if any of the jurors from the Ali case have spoken since the verdict? I do not. Um, I suspect when they realized what the reaction was to their verdict, they probably thought it was maybe a little bit smarter to kind of keep a low profile. Um, and if I felt like I was doing the absolute right thing, I would go on TV tomorrow and say, yes, as the jury, we didn't feel the prosecution had proved its case, and we made the decision that the law required us to make. And I'd let the chips fall where they may. But I'm also 69 years old, and I tend to care not a whole lot about what other people think if I know I've done the right thing. And that's just me. It'll be interesting to see, I think, what the jury does at the end of the Adelson case. Uh, Leon County is an interesting venue, Tallahassee and that area. It is a more diverse area, really, of Florida than you would normally think. Who pays for appellate lawyers? Seems like they do a lot of work for small gains if most appeals don't overturn convictions. Well, there are two different sources where that comes from. And the first place where that comes from is public defender's office. If the public defender's office handles the initial trial, then they are going to handle the appeal. In Missouri, the appellate defender division of the public defender's office had about 4 or 5 different attorneys in each of the 4 offices. There's an office in Kansas City, an office in St. Louis, and an office in Springfield, and those and Jeff City too. So 4 offices. Those offices would handle the appeals at all of the courts of appeal and the Supreme Court. And they have to prioritize. They wind up one of the reasons why a lot of people stay in jail for so long after they get a good result in the appellate court is because it takes so long to get there to begin with. It takes a long time to get transcripts. It takes a long time to work through a transcript, particularly a murder trial transcript like this one, where you've got almost 2 weeks of testimony. So that's one source. And then the federal system has the federal appellate defender's office, and that's who handles it for federal cases. Um, and no, the criminal cases do not get overturned nearly as often as civil cases. Thank you, everybody who has said something nice about Miss Ellie. I really appreciate it. They're not human, but they are family. That's absolutely true. Um, they need to stay away and hide. How they came to that conclusion is beyond me. I don't know if they were listening to the witnesses or not. The mom did not stop, and Dad should have, and she said she should have tried. My great uncle was an appellate judge in Springfield. Oh, all right. Um, the Springfield Court of Appeals, well, I guess it's now called the Southern District Court of Appeals. Um, at one time, it was the Court of Appeals in Missouri that had the largest number of transfer applications sustained at the Missouri Supreme Court. Um, when I clerked for Judge Robertson on the Supreme Court, we got a case in from the Southern District where the Southern District judges basically called the Highway Patrol a bunch of racists, and the Supreme Court did not cheer that on. That case, the appellate case, went away because they overturned it. Will you cover the Barrymore Few case? If I'm back in time, I certainly will. Uh, I'd like to cover that one. That was the one where the initial prosecutor in that case was disbarred. By the way, I wanted to go back for just a second to the cruise. We're going to Norway. So My wife said, since you're gonna wear some of your red shirts on the cruise, we ought to go get some trolls, and then we'll put a little card with the troll, because some people hide little ducks all over the place on these cruise ships. I have no idea where that started, but they hide little ducks all over the place. So my wife got a bunch of little trolls like this, about an inch tall, and I'm gonna band it together with this card that basically says, "Trolling for something to watch? Join me on my YouTube channel." So basically, I figure I can write off the premium Wi-Fi package on our taxes that way. Um, who knows? Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see. Um, are you going to cover the Mickey Steins Judge Mullen case out of Kentucky? I don't know what the court date is on that, or what the trial date is on that. It'll be interesting. I don't know that they've done enough discovery yet to be ready for trial, but it's going to be very interesting. There's gonna be a lot of stuff that's gonna be kinda hard to hear in that case too. I'm glad that they managed to make the Nick Casotus case a little bit more sterile than it would otherwise be. And there wasn't a lot of graphic imagery in that case. I'm really glad about that. That's brilliant. My wife will appreciate you saying that, because this was entirely her idea. Um, the best thing you can ever do in life is to marry well, and marry somebody who is smarter than you are, and who is not afraid to tell you when you're wrong. And you also have to be humble enough to accept the idea that maybe, every now and again you could be wrong. And so my wife is brilliant. My initial thought about that was, well, it's kind of goofy, maybe a little nerdy. And instead, I said that to her. I said, "It seems a little nerdy." She says, "You looked in the mirror lately?" Well, you know, I guess there's some truth to that too. Uh, how's the book coming along? Well, I'm about halfway through the first real substantive edit, and I keep finding stuff that I've left out. So like, oh no, doggone it! I got to sit there and type and add a couple of pages because I forgot to explain something that's really important. And but I will. I'm gonna get to that, and at some point, I'm gonna have to decide on a title. This is a creative group. I really want to get those by email. So if you have one of those, send it to me by email, because I want to be able to, I pick one, may even have people vote on one. I don't know, but when I do that, I want to be able to get back to that person so that I can get an address and things offline, so that their privacy is protected. So email is definitely the best way to get that to me. But some of the stuff that I've seen in the comments has just been it's been very, very good. I'll say that. Uh, yeah, it's hard when things get graphic. It really is. I love the troll thing I did. Those trolls are a big nostalgia thing here in Scandinavia. I'm Swedish, and I've lived in Norway for 5 years. True crime is also popular here in Scandinavia. We went to Scandinavia in 2001. We were on the Royal Princess. It was the ship that was named for Princess Diana. And we went down the Oslo fjord down to Oslo. And wow, that is a very beautiful part of the world. And I can't wait to go back. We're going to go around the west coast of Norway this time, instead of down the Oslo fjord. But we're really looking forward to it. My wife has always wanted to see the northern lights, and so I'm hoping that the space weather will be such that she can do that. Why are my comments not showing? I have it set to all comments, not rude or disrespectful. I don't do lives very often. I don't know. I'm seeing your comments, so I'm not sure why yours aren't showing up. It could be that things are just scrolling too fast. Sometimes that happens. Um, and then somebody says, "I can see you, Sue." So, and lots of people are chiming in. It's one of the things that you'll notice on this channel if you're new here, is that the people who come to this channel are kind, and they do kind things. They tell people when they can be heard or when they can't be heard, or what's going on, what's the reason why you might be having difficulty. A lot of really helpful people here, and I love that about the group of people that have, gathered on this channel. Cedar Hill, Texas on deck. I wonder where Cedar Hill is. I'm not familiar with Cedar Hill. Is it in the like the Bandera region? Oh, thank you, BB Lee. I appreciate that. That's very nice of you. Have a great cruise. Wishing you strength and peace over the weekend. Tell your wife thank you for letting you stream for Donna Adelson. I will definitely do that. Thank you, BB Lee. Oh my goodness. I my mother was an appellate specialist public defender. Yeah, that Nora, that's one of those jobs that requires somebody to really bring their best game. Uh, because a lot of times, because so many of the public defenders are entry level trial lawyers, they tend to make mistakes in issue preservation. Uh, they might think a motion in limine, for example, is preserves their evidentiary objection when it doesn't, at least in Missouri. And so, because they make those kinds of errors, appellate public defenders have to do a lot of work that they wouldn't otherwise have to do. So that is certainly one of the things that I think more often than not is missed by people who criticize our public defender system. In Missouri, our public defenders basically told them they didn't want to defend misdemeanors anymore because they didn't have enough people and they didn't have enough time, they didn't have days in the week to go take care of all the people who were charged. Um, and that should never be the case. There should always be enough public defenders to do a good job for these clients. But that is one reason why they take so many pleas. They take those pleas because they don't have time to adequately represent them and take it to trial. Now, they can't force a client to take a plea, obviously, but they can be pretty persuasive. Do you see at the top live? Okay, that's somebody trying to help somebody. Um, Gosh, I think I've kind of almost run out of stuff to talk about. Any other questions? Anything else anybody wants to know? Um, I mentioned when I talked about this earlier, we're going into London and we're going to go to a place called the Burroughs Market, which is kind of fun. If you get a chance to Google that, that's really fun. Or even on YouTube, search for that, and it's a neat place. Let's see. Prayers for strength as you say goodbye to your faithful furry friend. Yeah, I'm gonna need it. Thank you. Something is going on with YouTube. We can see your chats. Okay. That's again to them. Um, Gosh, I wish I knew what I was just talking about. Oh well. Waiting for another good question. Uh, yeah, it's just a YouTube thing. It's kind of funny to see how the things scroll sometimes. If you watch any of the live streams on Court TV or Law and Crime, the chat stream just goes a mile a minute. When you're looking for an item in the store, do you ever go to the correct aisle and then go to find mom and ask her where it is and she points to the aisle but you keep asking and take hold of her baby? I'm not sure what that pertains to. I'm late. I have to go back and see where I've been. Okay, that's fine. Am I going to cover the Kentucky case? Assuming that I'm back in time, yes, I will. I will do that. Again, I don't know what the trial date is on that. If anybody knows that, stick it in the chat, and I'll make a note of it on my calendar. Um, Watching from Germany. Germany is a very nice country to go visit too. We went to Hamburg, I think it was, when we took our cruise up to Europe in 2001. Um, lot of interesting things to see in that town. one of the places we went to. My wife swears that it was in Paris, but I'm pretty sure that it was in Germany that we went to the Godiva chocolate place. That was really marvelous. One of the neat things about Godiva chocolates in Europe is that unlike Godiva chocolates in the United States, they sometimes make them with real liqueur, and there's real liqueur in them. That's pretty neat. I didn't get a notification that you were live. Hello from England. Stay safe in London. There's a lot of discontent there right now. Thank you for your coverage of Casotus. Well, you're welcome. Yeah, we know that there is a lot of coverage in London of the discontent. We plan on getting around through the tube system. We've done that before, and it worked reasonably well. I understand there is now this scam where they the people who don't have cards close in right behind you in the tube turnstiles, and after you tap, they try and go through with you on one turn. Um, I can guarantee you I'm not gonna put up with that. You should get a sausage roll at Borough Market. Absolutely, we're gonna do that. Um, I wanna go get the paella. What do you think of the paella? That'd be something I need to know. There are so many neat things there. I'm also gonna go to the RAF museum. After we pass a certain age, we don't give too many Fs anymore. That's true. We look past bad actors. Only people who matter are those we care about. Yeah, it's a lot easier to ignore people who are rude and ugly to people, to just kind of write them off because it's not worth the bandwidth to be angry with them. And I would much rather be happy and kind and think the best of people. But if somebody insists on me thinking badly of them, I'm probably not gonna tell them. Uh, in f Wow, in 14 minutes online crime live trials. Yeah, um, sometimes trials can go that quickly. Um, I had a I was representing a guy on a credit card debt, and the guy owed the debt, but it had been probably 10 years. It hit at about 2004, 2005, just when the economy was starting to have some wiggles, and he got into trouble, lost his job. He was a veteran, PTSD, all that kind of stuff. And they sued him after the statute of limitations had gone. And they tried to use the strange theory about, well, we didn't get the case until we um, got the assignment. And it was just crazy what they tried to do. So, as you can imagine, when I said, the last charge that he made on that card was 10 years ago, Judge, more than 10 years ago. Statute of limitations is blown. He's like, that's right, end the case. And he gave us the judgment of, for us. So sometimes they do get over in 14 minutes. Uh, oh, so it's going on today in Kentucky. Well, I guess I'm going to have to go look at that as soon as we're done with the live stream. Um, and if it's 14 minutes, that means I'm going to have to end this at noon. Well, um, oh, that's a bond hearing, she says. What's your favorite film about lawyers, courts, court cases? Well, y- I would bet you that if people wanted to guess, they would be able to guess what my favorite film is. But let me give you a little bit of an idea. There was this guy who just, he came down to Alabama and he had to defend this guy from up north. And he and his buddy got into this car and there was a problem. There was a murder. That's my favorite film. My Cousin Vinny is one of the best films that's ever been made about, um, about law. And the reason is because there were so many things in there that lawyers actually do. When he said, would you say that, I forget what it was. Would you say something happened? The guy said, well, you could say that. And he said, I did say that. Did you say that? Or would you say that? And the guy said, well, yes. And you do that because You could say that is not an affirmative answer. You could interpret it as one, but an appellate court could interpret it as an equivocal answer and not give you credit for it. So, just so much of that was brilliant. And who could forget Marissa Tomei, with her biological clock? She kept pounding the table on her biological clock. I love Joe Pesci. This is a true story. Joe Pesci did an album after that trial or after that movie came out, and, it was something like Joe Pesci sings My Cousin Vinny or something like that, but it's basically about My Cousin Vinny, and there are some tracks on there, including a rap track that I could not play on YouTube because of the language in it. But, oh my goodness, it was hilarious. So if you get a chance, run down that CD or that album. I actually had it in an album form, which tells you how long ago that's been. It was a great little album. I'm not sure if this has already been asked. What do you think about the Karen Reed having civil rights case being called a 1983 case, I think? Um, if I were her, I would remember that living well is the best revenge. Um, I understand why they might attempt to do that, if for no other reason than to perhaps punish the people who illegitimately took her on. But there was probable cause. Now, I think after an investigation, they should have dropped the case. Don't get me wrong. But I think the 1983 case is a lot weaker than her defense in her civil case. Now, that doesn't mean it won't work. One thing that I know about Massachusetts is that they are risk averse and they will probably settle with her to avoid any problems with, getting slammed with a big verdict. I think one lady up there in Massachusetts got a pretty sizable 1983 verdict, and it's 42 USC section 1983, and it's the civil rights, essentially deprivation of civil rights under color of state law, meaning you act as the state in depriving somebody of their rights. It's the way that cops get sued all the time, and it's the courts have undercut very much in the same way they've undercut the actual Civil Rights Act, Title VII. They have undercut 1983 pretty significantly. It's very, very hard to win those cases, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try. Banana Banditos most love My Cousin Vinny. Absolutely. Such a great movie. Um, all tubers love it. We need a panel watch it together. Yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. That would be, oh, the Utes. Yeah. The what? The Utes. What? Oh, I'm sorry. The Utes. What a guy. I mean, that guy delivered lines better than most people could, I think. Uh, Mine is Liar Liar. Well, that's kind of my second favorite. Jim Carrey is pretty good in that case too. My favorite part of that movie is, "Oh, that was wonderful. How was it for you?" And he said, "Ah, I've had better." Ah, that was definitely not a politically correct thing to say. Um, well, I think I'm probably gonna cut this a little bit short here and get off so that everybody can go over and if that is not a bond hearing, well, I will look and see what kind of trial date they have for the Kentucky case, and I will try and definitely get on that one. I don't imagine there's too much in the way of mitigation in that case. I mean, there's no doubt about what happened. I think they have video. Um, again, I don't know whether it's going to be manslaughter or murder one. Who knows? All right. Well, again, thank you very much for being here. I appreciate all of the support. Um, while I am handing out these fuzzy little things on the ship, I will be thinking of you all. And assuming I can get this silly thing to work to stream while I'm on the boat, Like I said, we bought the best Wi-Fi package we could get. I will definitely stream and talk about the Adelson case when I have the opportunity. Thanks again for being here. I'm going to move over to my ending soon screen. Leave you guys some time to finish up any chats that you have going on. And next door in the Netherlands. All right, great. We're going among the places that we're going to Flam, and Flam has this train that takes you up the mountain. So we're definitely gonna go do the train in Flam. Um, and then we go up to Tromsø, and in Tromsø we're just basically trying to look for the Northern Lights that night. So again, thanks again for being here. Sorry I missed yesterday. I definitely wanted to do the Casotus verdict. That didn't quite work out. And maybe we'll get together on Saturday. I guess that's tomorrow. Maybe we won't get together on Saturday. I don't think two streams in the same day or same week would be a good thing. And I'll try to be a little bit more put together for the next stream. Thanks so much for being here. God bless you all, and we'll catch you next time.